Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 259, Wednesday, November the 21st, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much to my new subscribers. It's good to have you. Okay, as usual, we have a lot of news and very little time to get to it. So let's go ahead and get to it. Well, the unsealed bank records for Fusion GPS are now available for your reading pleasure. And the unsealed bank records for Fusion GPS show that Perkins Coie, the law firm that represented the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC, paid Fusion GPS $1,024,408 between May 24th, 2016 and December 28th, 2016. Again, that's $1,024,408 between the months of May 24th, 2016 and December 28th, 2016. The largest payment that was made just before the election was $365,000, and that was made on October the 28th. That would be just a week before the vote. That's when the largest payment was made of $365,000. The bank records do not show any payments being made to Christopher Steele. Despite the fact that Fusion GPS has stated that Steele was paid $168,000 in the months from June until November of 2016. Wonder why we don't have a record of the payment to Christopher Steele for $168,000. There should have been, I would assume, multiple checks. Probably not just one, but they're not there. That's very interesting. Fusion was also paid $528,000 by the law firm Baker Hostetler between March 7th, 2016 and October 31st, 2016. Fusion was working for Baker Hostetler to investigate Bill Browder, the London-based banker who helped push through the Magnitsky Act. Now, if you remember when he gave his testimony in front of Congress, we covered that here on TowerGate. And of course, his story is that there was corruption involved with the Russian government having to do with his firm, where he felt that his firm was cheated, had money stolen from them, embezzled from them. And so he hired an attorney named Oleksiy Magnitsky to investigate this. And Magnitsky began to investigate and apparently found the smoking gun, found the evidence, but then he was taken into custody by Russian security and police officials, and then he ended up dying in prison. And Mr. Browder has asserted that that occurred because Mr. Magnitsky was tortured to death. And so Mr. Browder came and gave his testimony to Congress, and based on the strength of his testimony to this story, they passed the Magnitsky Act, which was a little different than most sanctions that you generally see, because it didn't sanction a specific, country or government. It actually specifically sanctioned individuals of a foreign country and government. And this is what, of course, GPS Fusion was paying Veselnitskaya, this attorney, to try to get Trump to repeal or overturn the Magnitsky Act. So this is what we learn from this. Now, that's an awful lot of money, and it still leaves a lot of questions, because if Perkins Coie, through their attorney who was actually handling the case for Perkins Coie, and who also, remember, he was the general counsel for the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. He's also a personal attorney for John Podesta. And of course, we went through his bio. He's involved in many, many different, let's just say, operations for the Democratic Party going back many years. So he's a political activist and attorney for the Democrats only. He's a partisan, you might say, partisan political lawyer. But it's very interesting that we find that there was $1,024,408, $1.2 million, or a little over $1 million paid to Perkins Coie, but only $168,000 went to Christopher Steele, according to Fusion GPS. So you have to ask, where did the rest of that money go? Certainly, you can't imagine that there would have been nearly $900,000 or $875,000 in just standard legal fees from Perkins Coie to the Clinton campaign. That's an awful lot of money to pay a legal firm, I would think. Sounds like a lot of money to me. And of course, we have the allegations that many of these people were also paid, such as the sources for the dossier, we have been told were paid. It's been suggested that the intermediaries between Christopher Steele and these so-called Russian informants would have had to have been paid. I mean, these guys, they don't do that stuff for free, do they? You would have to assume everybody in the chain is being paid. Certainly, the intermediaries were being paid. Steele was being paid. And we can assume that these so-called Russian sources were being paid. We need to find out, and I expect that this will be coming eventually. I expect Nunes will be wanting to look into Perkins Coie, into their financial dealings, and try to get a breakdown of where that $1,024,000, where all that money went to, what it was used for. That's my guess. But we also had something else very interesting turn up in these unsealed bank records, and that is that the names and payments of what is believed to be 3 journalists were blacked out. They were redacted. Now, Devon Nunes, head of the House Intelligence Community, who brought this legal action, which gave us these bank records, is seeking to get the names of these 3 individuals unredacted. And of course, that lawsuit is continuing. That's where they're at now. He's trying to get that and more records from Fusion GPS. And we can assume that he'll be going to Perkins Coie and trying to find out what the disbursement of money was with that $1 million or so. But let's get back to these 3 sources. Now, we can pretty much assume who these people are. Devon Nunes believes he knows. Certainly, we think we know the names of these publications, because these would probably be the publications that have already been admitted by Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS and by Christopher Steele as being media organizations that they had contact with and spoke to. Journalists from those papers, which would be the New York Times, the Washington Post, Mother Jones, possibly, the Guardian. What's the other major paper I'm trying to think of? Anyway, there was these are the major media sources that have already been divulged. It's already been divulged that they had communication and contacts with Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, throughout the late summer and fall of 2016, as this dossier was being dispersed around the media community in Washington, D.C. and New York. So Nunes wants to know the names. He wants these 3 names redacted, and that's what he's pushing for now. But there's another very interesting entry in these bank records, and that is a entry that shows a payment being made to a Russian expert. A Russian expert. Who do you think that may have been? Well, you think about probably the most popular on the left, the most popular Russian expert on the left would be, what's his name? The professor. I'm trying to think of his name now. Married to Christina Vanderhoeven. What's his name? Cohen. Can't remember his first name, but his last name is Cohen. And he's a Russia expert on the left. But something tells me that it's someone else. something tells me that this Russian expert may be someone like Senator John Magoo. Do you think it could have been Senator Magoo who was the Russian expert who was paid? Maybe, although I would think Magoo would be a slight bit smarter than that. But anyway, we have the names of these 3 journalists that were blacked out or redacted, and we also have the name of this so-called Russian expert who also received payment. My guess is Devon Nunes is going to try to find out who these people are. And of course, that lawsuit's continuing. He's, they just got rid of the first judge, then they put in the second judge, this Judge Leon. Now we find out that he has a relationship with John Podesta, so now there's people calling for him to be removed. So this is one of the many problems that are created when you're trying to get to the bottom of some of this, is you run into so many of these types of obstacles and delays and things like that. But Devon Nunes is not quitting. He's continuing to push forward, and I believe that we will get the names of these 3 journalists, and that will be bad news for them, because it's not good if you're a media organization and it's learned that you took payment to publish a story. If we find out, now, if the paper doesn't know about that, they fire those journalists when they find out it was them. But what happens if the paper did know? And what happens if the paper was involved and was fully supportive of journalists working for their paper or news organization who took the money? That takes it to another level, doesn't it? All these things will be unearthed. You can bet on that. These are things that can be and will be learned, one way or another. One way or another, these things will be unearthed. Trump and Putin spoke on the phone for over an hour yesterday, or Tuesday, I should say, because I'm not sure what day you're watching this video. I'm not even sure what day I'm doing this video. So, on Tuesday, Trump and Putin spoke for over an hour, and they talked about defeating ISIS. They talked in Syria, specifically the ISIS situation in Syria, which they're just about defeated. They also talked about the Ukraine, and they talked about North Korea. Of course, when Trump and Putin are talking over the phone, I'm sure they both realize that they're under surveillance, that their phone calls are being monitored, recorded, listened to by everybody. Okay? There's no such thing as a secure phone call, my friends. If anyone tells you that they're making a secure phone call, they're crazy. I'm sure the NSA has got Trump's phone wired for sound, and Putin's as well. These guys are not stupid. So, of course, they discuss things that you would discuss when these two have a phone conversation about some fairly important issues in their joint effort to defeat ISIS and terrorism and things like that, which they're being very effective at this point, by the way. But I posed a question to a commenter just in the comment section about a week ago. I think it was Patty Willing. It's not that her comment said anything about this. I think I was the one that raised the issue. And I just asked the question, what do you think that Putin and Trump talk about when the two of them have a private moment? They don't have many private moments. Even when they're meeting in a capacity where it's official, they have an interpreter there for Putin because he doesn't like to talk serious stuff without an interpreter because his English is apparently not fantastic and he doesn't want to make any mistakes. Trump doesn't speak Russian, as far as we know. But Putin does speak English. He does. It's not, it's kind of broken English, but he understands English perfectly. Don't know how well he writes it, but he certainly speaks it well enough to communicate. So often we have seen, whenever Trump is at one of these meetings with a lot of other world leaders, you often see where he and Putin definitely are the closest two together. You almost always see Putin next to Trump, and they're always talking, making conversation between themselves, because it's probably the only time that they can have a little, exchange where they don't have a bunch of official people around them, interpreters and advisors and various other people, because there's probably things they would like to say to one another that they want to say confidentially that they don't want, interpreters or advisors or anyone else to hear, just some very personal things that they want to say to one another. I think that's why they find so many opportunities when they're walking from one point to another to be close side by side, and you'll see them looking over and exchanging conversation, obviously in English. And I'm absolutely convinced that Trump and Putin understand. They don't have to talk a whole lot about it. They understand. They have an understanding between them. I mean, let's face it. The very same people that have been trying to take down Putin and disrupt his government and create chaos in his country and take him down are the exact same people trying to do the exact same thing to Trump. Putin has about a 10-year head start on Trump. He's been dealing with these people already for over a decade. And he's watching Trump trying to deal with these people now. So I would not be the least bit surprised if in those little moments of conversation between Trump and Putin, Putin doesn't look over at Trump and say, look, I understand why you're having to be tough on me, and I get all that. Don't worry about it. I don't take it personally. I understand it. We got bigger fish to fry. Right now, I've got these globalists trying to take me down. They've been working on it for over 10 years. I've been fighting these people, and now they're after you. Mr. President, you and I have the same enemy. And working together, we can defeat them. Working alone, it's tough. So this is the type of conversation I think happens between Trump and Putin. And Trump probably says, yeah, Vladimir, I'm sorry I have to be, so hard on you, but I'm under a lot of pressure. I think you understand why and what's going on. Believe me, I'm gonna have served 2 terms, and when we get to the end of my second term, things are going to be hunky-dory. Don't worry about any of it. Everything that you're being sanctioned on and everything right now, you're going to get it all back. I'm going to take care of business. But right now, I have to deal with the reality of now. But I do understand that you and I are fighting the exact same enemy. So we have to be very careful about how we move, but we should definitely work together. But we have to be careful about how we go about doing that, because quite honestly, it will be used against us politically, both you and I. So I think that Trump and Putin have an understanding. They surely do. Not that they don't have real disagreements on Crimea and Ukraine, although I'm pretty sure that Putin has probably talked to Trump about Ukraine as well. He's probably said, if they're feeding you this stuff that we, did a coup or that we invaded Ukraine or anything like that, it's crazy talk. We didn't invade Ukraine or anything like that. It was a putsch, a coup, whatever you want to call it, with Mr. Yanukovych, and the evidence speaks for itself. I hope you'll look at that a little closer. If you want any information, we'll be happy to get it into your hands one way or another. So anyway, I think that there's these little moments between Trump and Putin where they probably exchange some real serious things about the state that they're both in. And let's face it, they're both alpha males. There's a lot about Putin and Trump that are very similar. And they're both fighting the same enemy. And yes, I would love to be a fly on the wall in those private moments when Putin and Trump have a chance to have some actual talk between them when no one else is capable of listening. So, just my thoughts. Well, I'm sure you've all heard that Democrat ranking member, Democrat John Conyers, who actually is the longest serving member of the House of Representatives. John Conyers, what is he, like 80-something years old or something? We're learning now that he paid off a sexual assault accuser. Now, since I actually saw this story, there's been a second accuser, and he's one of these people. You remember we wanted to get that list of names of members of Congress and staffers who've had taxpayer money settle their sexual assault cases or what have you. Well, he's one of those. This is one of those individuals on that list. This would have been one of the people, John Conyers, who settled a sexual lawsuit and he used taxpayer money to do it. I should also mention that there's a couple of attorneys who've been looking into this practice and are finding that it is not legal. It is not legal for the Congress to use taxpayer money to pay the personal sexual assault allegation settlements made against them by these plaintiffs. Illegal. And there's 2 or 3 attorneys, I forget don't have their names written down, but there's 2 or 3 attorneys from a law firm who've been looking at this case law, and they are getting ready to file suit because they're finding that according to case law, that's illegal. Congress cannot use taxpayer money to pay sexual assault claims for members of Congress. They are going to file the lawsuit and expect to have it filed within the next 10 days. John Conyers is one of those people. He should have to return all the money, period, along with all the rest. And by the way, there's a lot of pressure being brought. I mentioned yesterday you can go sign the petition at dickmorris.com to have the names of those people revealed. I believe we will get the names of those people revealed. It's going to take some time. It's going to be like root canal, but there's a lot of people calling for that, a lot of people leaning on people, including members of Congress actually, who are now stepping up and saying, yeah, we really need to stop this. We need to stop it, but we also need to go back and look at the people who actually did make their names public, and those people need to make restitution with the taxpayers. We need to get our money back. I don't like having my money, tax money, used to settle sexual harassment lawsuits against members of Congress or their staffers or anyone else. Nor do you. Bad news for the Democrats is if they need any more. They have now surpassed having their worst fundraising year in 15 years. The worst in 15 years. And that's saying something. And that tells you a lot about how a political party is going to fare in the upcoming elections. Especially Democrats, because Democrats rely a lot more on the ground game in elections to get out the vote. And a lot of money is required for a robust ground game. Because the ground game really is they take buses into the inner cities, which they have to rent. Take them buses. They have to pay people to get on the telephones or knock on doors and get a hold of people, and they call them every day, every single day for 2 or 3 weeks before the election. These people have to be paid. Then they actually send the buses to go pick them up. Then they stop by McDonald's on the way back and buy them lunch at McDonald's. Then they take them home. There's a lot of money across the country spent by Democrats on this type of grassroots ground game type activities. Republicans really don't have to do that. They don't really do any of that. It's mainly the Democrats. So Democrats have to raise more money than Republicans because they spend more money on the get out the vote effort. Republicans don't really have to be, prodded to go vote. You don't have to pick a Republican up and take him and buy him a hamburger. Okay? Republicans, they either say, yeah, I support this guy, I'm going to go vote for him, and I'll get there myself and I'll buy my own damn lunch, thank you. Or they just say, no, I don't like the guy, I'm not going to go vote for him. A lot of these people that go vote in these inner cities, they're literally people who they're clueless. They don't even, they go register them to vote the same day, or they send people to their house with a clipboard and a pen, and they sign them up a week or two ahead or something. So it's a very, very laborious process and a very expensive process for Democrats. So when you see that and we already know because we went over their FEC filings about a month ago, and they're seriously down. They only have about 15% of the money on hand that Republicans now have, and they have 4 times as much debt. So the Democrat National Committee has a ton of debt. They're finding it very difficult to raise money, and one of the reasons they're having a tough time raising money is because of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is making it very difficult for them to raise money. She leaves a very bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people. And when you see Hillary, all you can think about is, oh my God, $1.3 billion, and we lost. Because remember, a lot of this money that they count on comes from big donors. And these big donors, they just ponied up $1.3 billion and got nothing. Nothing. They were expecting to get something in return for that money, and they ain't getting it. They surely are not getting it. Bad news for the Democrats, huh? And of course, like I said, Roy Moore is probably going to win. He's we had the poll 2 days ago. He's down by 11, and the next day he's up by 15, and today they're saying he's up by 6. It's just, who knows? These polls, God only knows. But I don't know why we even listen to polls anymore. It seems that they're always wrong. But just Alabama, it's a hardcore red state. I can't imagine him electing this Democrat, no matter how much they may question Roy Moore, at this point, you got a Democrat running against him who's anti-gun, open borders, high tax, liberal social agenda. I mean, it's just all things that are extremely unpopular in Alabama. Good news. The girl many of you probably have heard about that was seen by over 1 million people, 10 million people actually, on YouTube video, the girl who ripped the hat, the Make America Great hat, off the guy's head at that Trump rally. She is facing 1 year in jail. Facing a year in jail. It's essentially assault. Trump is calling for the release of the names of the sex freak lawmakers named in these sexual harassment suits. So there you go. President Trump even wants to know the names, and he thinks that the taxpayers deserve to know the names of the people who we paid their sex, who we paid to settle their sexual harassment suits. So Trump is calling for the release of the names of those sex freak lawmakers named in sexual harassment suits. We have Nancy Pelosi calling for an ethics investigation of John Conyers, while we have Mad Maxine Waters claiming that Conyers has impeccable integrity with women. That ought to be a fun fight. Let's see a debate between Pelosi and Waters. I'd put that on pay-per-view. I would almost pay to watch a debate between Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. Could you imagine that? Oh my God, that would be funny as hell. I mean, that would be funny as hell. I mean, literally, they could have those two on Saturday Night Live and set it up for real, and it would be funnier than any skit they do. You couldn't fake a skit. You couldn't create a skit, artificially create a skit between those two and make it as funny as what the real debate would be. These are two people with the brains of a peanut, with the attention span of a goldfish, a cross-eyed goldfish, at that. These are two women whose minds are gone, baby, gone. These women don't have a brain cell left in their head. Imagine a debate between Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi on the subject of sexual ethics investigations for members of Congress, most of which appear to be Democrats. And all their left-wing friends out in Hollywood, it seems to be the lefties. All this started back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, with the feminist movements and Gloria Steinem. It's gone so far. And now we've gotten to the point where, to be quite honest with you, men have gotten to the point where, like, even where I work in an office or something, you are terrified to even look at a female, to say hi to her, to say good morning to her, to compliment her. You absolutely would never, ever compliment her on how she looks. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, you couldn't say, hey, that's a nice dress, or gee, you look nice today, or oh, that's a nice perfume you're wearing. Or, I mean, you say anything like that, men are literally terrified. So I have to say something, ladies. Ladies, if you find yourself at home and you're wondering why your phone ain't ringing, why you're not getting asked out on dates, it probably has nothing to do with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. The fact of the matter is, those men who maybe would be dying to ask you out or dying to do something like that are terrified to approach you. They're afraid because if they even look at you wrong, you might file a sexual harassment lawsuit against them and they'll be down on HR or getting fired. Men are terrified at this point. Terrified to speak to a woman in the workplace. And that's where most people usually meet, strike up their relationships, and end up getting married and live happily ever after, we hope. Not anymore. Because what do most people do? They get up, they go to work, they get home from work, they go home, they clean the house, they make dinner, what do, whatever they do, and it's time to go to bed. People don't have a lot of time to go out and do a lot of socializing. So they're left to sit there on the internet and try to get a date on the internet. They have no idea what kind of a freak or nutcase that they're getting hooked up with. They're much better off to date someone who they work with. At least they know it's a stable, solid, reliable person that they see every day at work. There's something about them, about their character. This is why it's so natural to meet people that you work with. But men now in the workplace are terrified. Terrified. I'm sorry, ladies. It's just the way it is. Feminism gone wild. It's boomeranged back. Now, the damn feminists, they don't care because they don't like men. They hate men. They hate them. Hate them, especially white men like me. I'm public enemy number one. Believe me. Believe me. Feminists would love to see me dead. And everyone who looks like me. But it's unfortunately hurt those normal women Nice women who would just like to meet a nice guy and go out and have dinner and have a relationship. Maybe it works out, they get married, and, you know, things work out. Not anymore. Not in the offices anymore. No, no, no. Do not even look at that woman. Do not compliment. Ladies, don't even bother getting up 2 hours early in the morning like my sisters used to do. I had 3 sisters. They'd get up an hour early to fix up their hair, put on their makeup, make sure they look pretty. Why? Because they want guys to notice them. Say, oh, she looks pretty today, to make a compliment. Women like to be complimented by a man in the right way. This is natural. Not anymore. Not anymore. The feminists have fucked it up for everybody, including the ladies. 600 gun murders now in Chicago, the home city to Barack Obama and the rotten Reverend Clinton. Well, we've still got about a month to go, month and a half or so. They might get to 700. Unbelievable. This is a city where you're not allowed to have any guns. 600 murders in a city where you're not allowed to own a firearm. Imagine that. The FBI formally announces it cannot verify any of the dossier. It can't verify any of it. Formally announced. Thank you very much. The FBI is going to interview Dana Rohrabacher over the Assange meeting. Rohrabacher says that Americans would be outraged if they could hear what Assange told him in private. Wonder what he told Mr. Rohrabacher in private. But we know what Mr. Rohrabacher is going to tell the FBI. They're going to tell him exactly what he's already told, what he told Sean Hannity. Julian Assange said that the DNC emails didn't come to him from any government actor, certainly not Russia. They came to him from a private source. And Julian Assange has told Rohrabacher it was an inside job. Thank you very much for tuning in. TowerGate, day 259. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye.